Hi, and welcome to another Ethical Corporation webinar. My name is Liam Dowd, Managing Director at Ethical Corporation, and today's webinar will be looking at how companies can engage key stakeholder groups on their purpose-driven vision. Today's webinar is part of the knowledge exchange in the build-up to this year's Responsible Business Summit Europe, taking place in London on the 10th to 12th of June. This year's event is our most ambitious event to date, with output-driven workshops and practical deep dive case studies spread across the 3 days. We will be challenging all of our attendees to share ideas and find collaborations which will help scale ambitions and impact against the key social and environmental challenges that we face. We need transformative action, and we plan on driving such thinking at the event. Companies are increasingly looking to purpose to identify where they can take the lead and have the greatest impact. And there's an increasing expectation on business to take the lead. The 2019 Edelman Trust Barometer highlights that only 1 in 5 people across the globe believe the current system is working for them. In this same very report, 76% of people say CEOs should take the lead on change rather than waiting for governments. That is an 11-point rise on the previous year's report. And if we are to solve the world's challenges, we're right to shift the increasing focus towards companies. Approximately 70% of the world's GDP lies within the private sector. We can no longer expect the public sector to fix the world's ills with just 30% of the pie. Thankfully, companies are embracing the challenge, and there's increasing evidence that purpose-driven companies that think long-term and work to address these issues are more stable and more profitable. We're also seeing a shift in all forms of corporate communications. A notable change is the rise of what many would describe as activist-driven TV ads. Both in Europe and North America, the past couple of years has seen mainstream TV ads on key social and environmental issues. From Aldi looking to tackle equal pay, Iceland tackling palm oil, and Budweiser addressing immigration are just a few examples over the past 18 to 24 months. If done successfully, a purpose-driven communication strategy can build trust, drive action, and deliver increased business success. In today's webinar, we have over 1,600 sign-ups, and I'm pleased to be joined by 4 great speakers to share how they and their company are engaging their stakeholders on their particular strategies and initiatives. Today's panelists include Dagmar van der Plas, lead of the Global Think Forward initiative at ING, Rupert Maitland-Titterton, Senior Director of Corporate Affairs at Kellogg's, Andrea Stovin, Director Global Sustainability Communications at AstraZeneca, and Rasmus Skov, Head of Sustainability at Ørsted. In today's webinar, the format will be, first off, the speakers will have approximately 6 to 7 minutes to share insights into their work. We'll then open discussion to you, the listeners, for questions. We'll be compiling questions as the presenters are speaking, so please do get your question in as the presentations are taking place. To do so, simply use the question box on the bottom right-hand side of your webinar software, or if you're on social media, please use Twitter and use the hashtag RBSEU. So let's get things started. Dagmar, I believe you will be sharing ING's Think Forward initiative with a few slides. I'd like to now invite you to kick off today's presentations and share what you and your organisation is doing. If you bear with us 1 second, we're just going to unmute Dagmar. There we are. Are you with us now?
Yes, I can hear you, Liam, and thank you for the introduction. Hi all, I'm Dagmar van der Plas from Holland. I'm a sustainability manager at ING, and in that role, the social lead of our global sustainability direction. Let me start to make the statement that we all know that the world is changing so quickly that it's sometimes hard to keep up. And we at ING have the aim to empower people to stay a step ahead in these changes. And to help them thrive in tomorrow's world by addressing the threats of both climate change and financial hardship. We've made a lot of progress integrating sustainability with the business, but we're not done yet. We have a sustainability direction to guide us, so all of our activities and initiatives will help to contribute to either a low-carbon society or a financial healthy society. And we feel that a low-carbon society is achieved when we align our lending portfolio to the Paris Agreement goals And a financially healthy society to us is achieved when people's day-to-day money management decisions build a long-term resilience and opportunity. We try to empower people's financial health by helping them to understand and adapt their behavior by providing them with the insights and tools to take action. During this webinar, I would love to tell you more on the Think Forward initiative. It's one of our flagship initiatives of the sustainability directions, and it's where we want to contribute to a financial healthy society. The purpose of the initiative is to empower 100 million people to make better financial decisions. It's joint collaborations with partners, Dimension Data, Deloitte, the Center for Economic and Policy Research. That's a group of academics in Europe investigating household dynamics. It's Amazon Web Services and also Dell EMC and of course also ING. Why? Because 42% of all EU households, which is approximately 215 million people, are not financially empowered and have difficulty to make ends meet. And in addition, 44% of households in Europe are not likely prepared for future needs, which eventually can lead to money stress in the future. It's difficult for them to invest in their individual and family's future. And with the Think Forward initiative, we aim to solve this. And just to give you a bit more background, the level of income is not the only reason why people might feel squeezed each month. Equally important are the small decisions that people make in their daily lives about how they spend their money. And they might be small, but these decisions have a big impact on their financial well-being. And this impact is even more significant when these decisions are not properly thought through. And this can affect a person's financial well-being in the longer term. The Think Forward initiative, to conclude, is based on the belief that our society is better off when people make sound decisions. If we go to the next slide, I would like to tell you more about how we're organized. The Think Forward initiative consists of 3 hubs. We have the research hub, and that generates insights from both newly commissioned research, but also builds on existing knowledge to better understand how individuals and households can improve their financial decision-making and well-being. The research community consists of over 700 experts from diverse fields. And since 2016, the TFI Research Hub has initiated around 45 short-term, which are lasting up to 6 months, and long-term research projects, and these last up to 2 years. And they address a wide variety of challenges. For example, they aim to uncover actionable insights to improve people's financial lives. And the insights derived are then published as TFI reports and blogs and shared through all relevant channels. Then the next one is our Accelerator Hub. It turns research insights into innovative and marketable solutions. And it helps startups that fit the purpose of the Think Forward initiative to scale faster through our TFI Growth Track. And the startups significantly benefit from the experience and networks of the TFI partners and their broader ecosystems. And once they graduate from the Accelerator Hub, the Think Forward initiative continues to mentor them so they can continue to scale and maximize their impact. And our incubator track has been established to develop new innovations that can grow into viable solutions. And these innovations are created to fulfill the needs identified by the Research Hub and to fill the gaps found in the current available solutions. And to conclude, I feel this is also the most relevant hub for this webinar. It's our Community Hub. That's where our members connect, collaborate, and network. And also where we communicate the insights with consumers that can have a positive impact on their financial well-being. Our TFI community members come from various sectors, such as academia, civil society, government, and also the private sector. 3 successful summits, regular working group meetings, along with regular social media campaigns, have allowed our members to interact with and to also reach a wider audience. To give you an example, we have designed impact hacks by the TFI community to maximize the outreach of insights to consumers through a variety of social channels. We've launched them in September 2018, and as of yesterday, we have already reached 10 million people with these insights. Again, we aim to empower 100 million people across Europe to make better financial decisions so they can get ahead in life. If we go to the next slide, it's an overview of organizations part of our community. It consists at the moment around 1,700 individuals from a range of organizations. By becoming a member of the TFI community, people can play a role in fostering greater financial capability among consumers, but they also will have the opportunity to make proposals for the TFI agenda for the coming years, co-develop viable solutions, and also make them available to consumers through their own channels. Also, the C-suite of our partner organizations is super much engaged and involved in the Think Forward initiative. We have a governance structure where we have a management board and also a senior executive board where we have representatives from all the partner organizations in the Think Forward initiative to make sure that it's very well connected within the whole organization. If we go to the next slide, of course, the challenge is to deliver real scale. You see a few examples of outings from the recent months. Just to come back to the number I already shared with you during the last slide, we kind of outperformed in our objective because we set ourselves the objective to have reached 2 million people before mid-2019, which we kind of outperformed. Also sensitive of time, if we go to the next slide, question is how to deliver societal-wide change on what is such an important topic. And we hope that the answer is to work along with others. So what we hope to launch is an EU financial health index, which will provide an ongoing snapshot of the financial health of people in Europe and actually how it's changing over time. So if you have that, well, if you like to say, baseline of financial health, you could collaborate with other financial institutions to say, hey, guys, this is to us the Paris Agreement on financial health. You could collaborate to make sure that financial institutions reconfigure existing products and also create new ones designed to promote better financial health. And ultimately, I would love to have financial health measured and reported on as a very important societal and economic indicator of, well, if you like to say, a global overall well-being. That's it for now. It was really, in a nutshell, the Think Forward initiative. Happy to answer any question you might have during the Q&A later in this webinar. Thank you, Liam. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dagmar. Thank you. And we've had a question to come in whilst I have you there. I'd just like to ask this question that we've had come in from the audience. So it's regarding the measuring of impact, which is obviously part of, I suppose, the success. Can define the success of the communications and the initiative that you kindly shared with us. So it's more around not just the people reached, but how are you measuring its impact in terms of helping people get ahead, improving their financial situation? Are these do you have examples of some of these metrics you're using and how they're, I suppose, resonating internally?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have like an overall impact measurement model, which is about reach, relevance, resilience, and ultimately the change of behavior. So what we can measure at the moment is reach and relevance. Reach to us is interactions with people. And relevance is when you engage with them. So if they start a conversation or if they use one of the apps we further scale in our incubator track. And the resilience and the change behavior part is more difficult to measure. So that's also why we would love to launch the Financial Health Index, where we want to start with self-reported data. So it's a kind of extensive survey where people will indicate how they go along with their financial decisions and their money matters. And eventually, if the GDPR and PSD2 is further, we like to copy-paste an approach in the US from the Center for Financial Service Innovation, where you can combine the self-reported data with the observed data. So if you can match transaction data aggregated with the self-reported data, you will have a beautiful tool to design interventions, but also to measure if indeed all the interventions did have a real impact to a person. I hope that makes sense.
It did, yes. And one final question is, we've got a global audience listening to today's webinar, and one person's asked, is the initiative just limited to those living in Europe?
Yeah, so our target group for now is Europe, because to us it's also an experiment. But our research and our innovations are globally. And we're not excluding the possibility to also scale to the rest of the world. But for now, we first want to prove that we can make an impact in Europe.
Brilliant. Thank you. And there's a few more questions coming in, but I'll hold on them and just bring the other speakers in who have got their presentations still to come. So thank you, Dagmar.
Sure.
Now I'll be moving over to Andrea. So yes, excited to have you involved in today's webinar. Last year AstraZeneca, as you well know, won one of our awards, our Responsible Business Award, for your community investment work around your youth health program. And I recall employee advocacy was a key component of helping you achieve those impacts that you delivered. And as part of today's webinar, you're going to be sharing how you're using a social media tool to really engage and drive, I suppose, advocacy amongst your employees on some of your initiatives. So, Andrea, I'd like to hand over to you, and we've got, I believe, a slide deck coming up now.
Great, thank you, Liam. And this does refer back to what you were sort of speaking about in the intro, really, where the sort of activism in advertising and actually using internal social media platforms to kind of harness that with employees. So if we could move on to the first slide, that would be great. So, I mean, I'm sure these are things that most people on the webinar have seen in the news in terms of, particularly in the tech industry last year, there were, and even a couple this year, there's been quite a few sort of employee activism cases making the news, with Google walkouts and Amazon protests, and it's kind of something that seems to, with a quick search, seems to show that this is an increasing trend amongst employee groups, where they take a stand and actually go out and kind of drive change amongst the workforce. And actually, the commentary, I say from a quick search on this topic, says that this isn't going to go away. This is the new reality. Employees are making their engagement visible. And of course, this can be used to defend employers and act as advocates as well. But the stats say that 2 in 10 employees at this stage now are classed as activist employees. So that's obviously something that's got a potential in the future. So, I mean, how do we harness this in a positive way to increase employee motivation and actually to create greater engagement around purpose and vision? We can move on to the next slide. So here at AstraZeneca, we've taken on last year a new social platform. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Workplace, and I know there's many others that other organisations are using. I know Slack is another popular one, but we took on Workplace, which is effectively the Facebook interface, but for internal use only. And it works in exactly the same way. Anyone who already has Facebook, it's very familiar and very intuitive and easy to use. It's also obviously fully mobile. So although we'd had a number of attempts with using employee social platforms previously, we haven't had anywhere near the success that we've had with Workplace. And it's actually a year today since we launched it. So it's quite good timing that this webinar came around today. And in effect, we've been able to use the platform to kind of to make sure everyone can get their voice heard. And there's been various stages in implementing this, which I'll run through later on. But we've had, as you can see from the stats on this slide, we've had really excellent uptake. So we have around 65,000 employees around the globe. And so we've got almost all of them actually active users. And the uses of Workplace we've found are now highly valued after only a year with the platform. So we've been able to use things like live streaming and live events. We've kind of moved most of our help and support functions onto there. Promise Liam, we wouldn't say the B word, but there is a big Brexit conversation going on the Workplace groups as well. And there's a special group that's sort of helping to decipher the latest developments on that. There's also special interest groups which people have set up themselves, and that can be in a particular kind of science area or a particular topic area. And some of them are even hobby or pet related. There's a very popular dog group. So we've kind of really seen a community be formed because of the use of this social platform. And when you've got, you know, kind of a global organisation, I mean, it says on the slide here, there's 77 countries using this platform, and because of the translation.
Hello, Andrew. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We just lost you for literally 10-15 seconds there. I think there was a disconnect. So are you still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly. Yep, we're good to go.
Okay, great. So how does having a great success with a new social platform help us to achieve greater engagement around our purpose? I think where this comes in, particularly that I can talk to, is regarding our sustainability strategy. So our company purpose is to push the boundaries of science to deliver life-changing medicines. That's kind of what we do. And there's obviously a lot of work on the social platform to drive that as well. But equally important to us as a company is how we do it. And that is where our sustainability strategy comes in. So we have three priorities in our sustainability strategy. Firstly is access to healthcare, and this is where we obviously feel as a pharmaceutical company we can make a big impact in the world and provide more healthcare options to more people. Secondly is environmental protection, which is obviously common to most big organisations, and also ethics and transparency is our third priority area. And actually, we've done quite a lot of crowdsourcing using this new platform to develop the greater detail under these three priorities up to a 2025 strategy. So this was actually one of the first big projects that took place on the Workplace platform. Global employee crowdsourcing to actually help us to develop the strategy further. And it wasn't just the sustainability strategy, it was all across the company. But sustainability was a really popular sort of conversation topic, and we could really delve into people's views, very different perspectives from around the globe on how we should prioritise what we do in this space and why. And we were able to be very inclusive in a way that we hadn't before, to be able to actually get our employees to help us shape that strategy using this platform. We later saw an even greater evolution into employees actually generating their own content. So as different groups have emerged, different special topic areas and special interest areas, we've had a number of groups that have been set up which kind of talk to sustainability areas, and there's actually been projects and initiatives which have come out of those, which employees have come up with themselves. So this is a fantastic kind of evolution into activation rather than just purely communications and pushing out the sort of messages as we were before. We're actually able to get people so much more involved that they actually are coming up with their own ideas and projects and taking them on and running with them themselves as groups of employees. And finally, they're also developing their own kind of communications content effectively. So the example in the middle here on the slide is actually a call out from one of our leaders, which is asking to tell people, what does an inclusive culture mean to you, and asking if they could share why inclusion matters. And actually a group of employees went and developed a sort of homemade video, and it's actually, we haven't got time to show it today, unfortunately, but it's really, really fantastic and really engaging, and they did a fantastic job, and that's now actually been shown at our recent senior leader meeting hosted by the CEO. So it's got a lot of traction internally as well, and it wasn't a comms person, it wasn't somebody going around making people do it. It was completely generated by the employees themselves. So I think especially important for sustainability and sort of CSR strategy is to get this inclusiveness, and this is where getting a really engaging social platform can help you a lot, because obviously it's not all delivered by one group, because it's how we do things. Every department and every person in the organisation is responsible for your sustainability strategy and for delivering against that. And we actually need to generate enough engagement to drive departmental and local action so that we can achieve our targets and also to stay innovative. Next slide, please. So there's just a few factors here which I think were the kind of key important areas that helped this be successful. I mean, as I mentioned, we had tried to use social platforms internally before, and although they had a level of success, it has been nowhere near the level of success that we've experienced with 1 year of using Workplace. I think leadership role modelling is absolutely key, and we had excellent buy-in from all of our senior executive team, and they use it extensively, and they're actually finding huge benefits, particularly those who've got very dispersed workforces, to be able to have a greater level of engagement with their teams. So that's really critical, and it's the wording there is sort of show not tell. Show people how we want to use this platform, and make sure you're accessible. We do have instances where people, obviously because you can reply and comment and interact with the engagements from the leaders, it's not just a one-way street, and actually people feel more comfortable a lot of the time interacting in that way. So it's encouraged challenge, and there will be challenge, and actually that's really opened up our communications channels and made them much more valuable and much more accessible. There was quite an extensive pathway to getting to the stage we're at now, and although it's been quite quick with a year as to how far we've progressed using the platform, there was a lot of work and time and effort put into getting to where we are today. It did not happen by accident, so I think that's definitely a learning for any other organisations that want to look into using this to drive their engagement. High value content. It's difficult and there's some tough decisions that have to be made, but you have to make people go there, because if there's always a kind of opt-out and you can go and do it somewhere else, or it sits somewhere else, then people are not going to be driven to go and use the platform as it's intended, and they won't get the hang of it. There's obviously a lot of people in an organisation who probably already have Facebook and can use this quite easily and very quickly get used to it. And there are others where this is an uncomfortable place for them. So we need to make sure that everything on there is got the what's in it for me factor, and it's not just another thing to do on your long list of to do. Supporting each other, we've found this really a useful part of the tool, because we're able to, again, comment and join in conversations. It's moving beyond telling people to sort of showing them and then asking them what to do. So it's encouraging interaction with content, and it's a really great platform for recognition in a quick and easy and authentic way. And finally, report on wins. We do quite frequently sort of tell our employees how we're doing on the platform, and although we don't have any sort of hard metrics in that we wanted to get X number of people on by this date, because it isn't mandatory and everyone doesn't have to be on it, but by kind of showing how it's progressed, and actually the most important thing has been showing where it's created wins for the business, where it's helped someone solve a problem, where it's helped come up with a new project or idea. That's actually the examples that drive further action and motivation, because people can see a value to both themselves and to the business. Back over to you, Liam.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. And firstly, I'll let you get away without the mention of the B word. There's, as I said, we're alluding to in our previous conversations, there's enough of that in the news. So hopefully, we're going to steer clear as much as possible in this discussion. Secondly, on regards to that video that you mentioned, what we can do, and we've had a couple of questions, and what we can do is share the video as part of the webinar follow-up to all those that are listening in. And yeah, make sure that everyone can access that video post-webinar. Whilst I have you here, I've had a number of questions come through, and it was one actually I drafted up myself as you were speaking around employee-generated content. Obviously that kind of raised a lot of, I suppose, alarm bells for some people where employees are generating. How can you, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, police what's being said, foul language and all the other, I suppose, risks or considerations that come with that. So how have you put a strategy in place to ensure, there is the employees feel that they have the liberty to obviously generate that content and that, but obviously still have, I suppose, retain some control? There's a fine balance there, and I suppose it'd be great to get your thoughts on how that's kind of tread, so to say.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And to be honest, we have kept the rules, as it were, very light. We've really wanted to keep it open and inclusive, encourage challenge, encourage dialogue, and actually by being too prescriptive, that would stifle that. So, when we initially rolled it out, there were some, kind of basic guidelines and basic how-tos, but it was all really just very short and common sense, and with the ethos of, respecting each other. And that was really the only thing we needed to highlight. It is an internal channel, so there's no sort of issues in terms of sharing anything that's going to be sensitive externally. And as long as everybody is in the right spirit, and again, it kind of comes to the how rather than the what. So as long as everyone's approaching it in the spirit of respect for one another, then I think, and abiding by our company values when they're on the site, we've had very, very few issues, and everyone's really embraced it in a very positive way.
That's great, thank you. And one final question. So you're obviously getting the employee feedback, and you mentioned this as part of your of what you shared is the two-way dialogue. So have you got any examples of where you've taken that feedback and translated it into action? Because obviously that will that showcases that it is a platform where employees can make a difference and can, I suppose, shape future direction or strategies. Have you got any examples you can share?
Yes, I think the best example is the strategy work that took place. So the sort of labelled hashtag AZ2025. We actually did an extensive crowdsourcing kind of campaign as part of this strategy refresh last year. And really, this is where the platform came into its own, because we actually directly went out with key questions. We had our senior executive team and other leaders sort of hosting sessions and doing live sessions, joining in on the chat. And we were able to elicit like hundreds and thousands of comments and inputs to direct questions about how we should proceed as a company, where our priorities should lie, and we covered those across sustainability, of course, but also across all of our sort of other main business areas. And people could join into the sessions that they felt were most appropriate to their expertise or their areas of interest. And the outcome was actually the strategy refresh, which was communicated in the sort of end of January when we reported our full year results, which would have been the first time that the sort of outside world saw this. Everything about that strategy has had direct input from employees via this platform. So what we are kind of now proceeding with as a company and the direction we're travelling in was all directly influenced by these discussions.
That's brilliant. That's great to hear. Okay, well, look, there's a few more questions, and I've got a couple here lined up, so we can dive a little bit deeper. As you mentioned, the stage of the development, we can come back to that as later on in the Q&A. Now I'd like to hand over to Rasmus, please. And I know, Rasmus, your business hasn't been doing much in the past couple of years, well, except obviously a complete re-strategization, a rebranding from Dong Energy to Ørsted. So, I suppose not been much for you to communicate, I suppose, to some of your stakeholders. But no, jokes aside, you've undergone a quite a seismic transformational change, and I know you've got some interesting insights to share on that. And yes, I'd like to hand over just for you to present your slides, and then we can dive into a few questions afterwards. So, Rasmus, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Liam, and I hope everybody can hear me all right. I am, after all the way over in Copenhagen. You never know, it's 2019, but you never know.
We're all good. We're still looped in at the moment. Yep.
Great, sounds good. Yeah, I want to take a little bit more of a macro perspective than what Andrea did. And it's funny, I was on a panel like only 2 months ago with Jim, who was in one of your slides, and he was also telling about your impressive employee engagement, and I think I made almost the same comment. And I wanted to go a little bit higher up in the helicopter here and talk about the link between limiting climate change and deployment of green energy. But that in order to be able to solve major challenges like that, you need stakeholder groups that take collaborative action, and that's really what I'll be focusing on here in my 6 minutes. First of all, just a few words about Ørsted. For those of you who don't know, Ørsted used to be called Dong Energy until a year and a half ago, when we changed our name to Ørsted. Ørsted is the surname of a former or a famous Danish scientist who was, among other things, the person who discovered electromagnetism. We thought that was very fitting for the journey that we want to take, because this green transformation that we're embarking on is very much an electricity-driven transformation. We are the leading offshore wind business in the world. We have approximately 30% market share. We invest between 75 and 85% of all our capital in the offshore wind business. And then we have various other business areas that we want to develop in terms of onshore wind and solar PV and storage. We have a bioenergy division that runs Danish combined heat and power stations, where we are phasing out coal and substituting that with certified sustainable biomass. And then we have a route to market service, so that we can help some of our large business partners make their productions greener. We were very grateful that in January, Corporate Knights ranked us as the most sustainable energy company in the world, and only 10 days after that, we posted record profits. And I think sometimes I just finish the conversation there, but I've promised Liam to go a little bit deeper. No, but I think the point here is that one of the things that we have that we're proud of being able to show is that you can transform a business in a way that helps combat some of society's biggest challenges while remaining or increasing your profitability. Next slide, please. So, I think everybody on this call probably knows that climate change is one of the most critical challenges that we face, if not the most critical one. We've learned from the most recent IPCC report that we need to limit climate change or global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius if we are not to risk uncontrollable effects that I think go beyond our wildest imaginations in terms of the effects it will have on our financial markets, on the stability of and our ability to provide sustenance for everybody on this planet. The energy sector contributes around 75% of all carbon emissions, and therefore it is absolutely crucial that we decarbonize the way that we provide and consume energy. According to the IPCC projections, carbon emissions need to fall by 55% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050, which in effect means with the current realistic reduction trajectories, we are going to need to rely on on carbon sequestration by 2050. Next slide, please. Our response to this has been a year and a half ago when we changed our name to also launch a new vision, which as you can see, is maybe a little different from a normal type of a vision, because this is more of a call to action. We're saying, let's create a world that runs entirely on green energy. We're fully aware that we cannot do this on our own. We're determined to do our best, but it is something that it's an endeavor that we need all stakeholder groups to chip into. Next slide, please. So when you look at the 1.5 trajectory, what IPCC recommends is a steady acceleration, I would say, of the deployment of green energy. We're going to 99% green energy by 2025. So we're certainly above the IPCC recommendations, but the global averages aren't there at all. Today, depending on how you count, we're at approximately 10 or a little less than 20% green energy in our consumption. That needs to the pace of change must accelerate to limit climate change, and obviously the effect of deploying more green energy and substituting fossil-based energy is that carbon emissions fall. This is the 2-degree reduction trajectory of the energy sector that the International Energy Agency has put out. There is not yet a 1.5-degree trajectory. I think we're pretty safe on the safe side of that as well. But this is what we think provides the legitimacy for us to begin to be a stronger voice in the global conversation about what is required of all stakeholder groups to limit climate change. Next slide, please. The green energy that we generate will provide green energy, or will provide power to millions of people. Today we're at a little more than 12 million people. By 2025 we'll be at more than 30 million people, and by 2030 that number will be more than 50 million people. And the reason why I'm showing this is, if you move to the next slide, this development in the deployment of green energy has a significant knock-on effect on the scale and the ambitions of various stakeholder groups. Now, we've seen over the past years, we ourselves have invested approximately $25 billion in the past decade in green energy, and we commit to investing another $30 billion in green energy over the next 6 years alone. But what we've seen is a significant price drop. So over the past 6 years, the price of offshore wind has dropped by more than 63%, meaning that it is today cheaper to build offshore, onshore wind, and also solar PV than it is to build new natural gas, coal-fired power stations or nuclear plants. There was even a report out the other day that it's for some, in the case of some coal-fired power stations in the U.S., it's cheaper to shut them down and instead build green energy capacity. So this is a significant game changer that we think will really dramatically, or help dramatically accelerate the deployment of green energy, and it will convene many more stakeholders around the build out of green energy. Now, to get there, and this is where the stakeholder groups come in. To get there, we could not do this alone. We've been reliant on regulators that have been setting renewable energy targets and frameworks that support deployment of green energy and really providing that long-term visibility on market development, and that has helped suppliers, or us, it has helped us convince suppliers to tune their manufacturing processes into processes that support the green energy sector. That efficiency gain is a key contributor to bringing down cost. Another gain has come from the fact that this is providing long-term investment opportunities for investors, and a way that we have applied this is that we've built an offshore wind farm, then we've divested 50% of that wind farm to an investor looking for stable returns, and we've been able to take that money, invest in new projects, and in that way continue the build out pace, or even accelerate it. All of that combined with innovation that has resulted in progressively larger turbines, for instance. They're now at a scale where the rotor size is larger than the Colosseum. These are massive machines that we install offshore. The economies of scale that we've been able to introduce, that in combination has helped bring down the cost of green energy. And as I said, I think this is a key convening power, because 10 years ago offshore wind was just a niche technology, and the key contention point was price. I think most people 10 years ago realized that green energy was the future, but we weren't really sure which technologies were going to be the dominant ones, and what would the pace of change, what could the pace of change be. But with the price drops that we're seeing today, it's inevitable that this will continue to happen. We see in traditional coal-producing countries that they are also now looking at building, for instance, offshore wind, and certainly also other green technologies, because it's the economic choice, and that kind of leaves out all arguments, or all other arguments. Thanks, Liam. I think that was it. What I had for now. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Rasmus. And yeah, as alluded to, really inspiring, and that's the kind of ambition and transformation we need to see if we are going to stay within the 1.5 degree limit and obviously attain some of the all the goals that are ahead of us. One question that's come in, and it's one of the actual ones I proposed to it before the webinar. It's your vision to create a world that runs entirely on green energy. That's, as I say, transformative and a massive change of direction for your business. And there must have been some doubters at the beginning, concerned about such a change, and obviously the impact on the business success and other points that allude to that. So can you point to any example where you were challenged, and how you engaged and how you communicated to build their trust and get them to be supportive of this new journey?
Yeah, I think the easy answer, or the easy way to respond to that, is to go back to the question about price, because price was simply the main sticking point. The people that we talked to were very clear that green energy had to be the future, but they didn't want to pay for it, or they didn't want to pay for the prices that we've seen. We've been fortunate that forward-looking policymakers have set targets and frameworks for that incentivize deployment of green energy, and I think that's been a crucial thing. And but I think these contention points, they continue to pop up. I mean, today the conversation about land use, for instance, I think is going to be progressively more important. When you've got a piece of land, what is the right way to use that? Is that to build a big solar farm? Is it to produce crops for food? Is it to produce crops for biofuels? That the competition, or is it to leave it alone? Basically, I think the competition for land, I think, is one of those areas that are going to be really contentious moving forward. So I think these various contention points, they will continue to pop up as the industry and the conversation around this matures.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The whole area of land use and the best full impact assessments, I suppose, of the different options that are available. That's something that's coming up a lot in our research. So I'm in agreement. I think that's something we can see increase. So thank you for that, Rasmus. And just to mention, Rupert has unfortunately been unable to dial in. So yes, we won't be able to present Rupert's presentation and his work, but we'll obviously look to maybe run a Q&A with Rupert to try and draw some insights from what they're doing at Kellogg's, and obviously we'll share that with all the listeners from today's webinar. So had a whole raft of questions coming in, and a lot of them some really interesting questions. So I'd like to take it back to you, Dagmar. So we have, let me just roll back to it. So we've had a question around, I suppose, bringing it back to the, I suppose, business success, and around, let me paraphrase, how you engage in the C-suite on this Think Forward initiative, and what's how it's creating new opportunities for business, how you're getting that, I suppose, increased buy-in to potentially scale up your work and ambitions. Hello, yeah, sorry, we didn't have you there.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the question, Liam. So to us, it's important to, in the coalition of the willing, if we sometimes call the Think Forward initiative partnership with the other organizations, to us it's important to have partners on board who share the purpose of the Think Forward initiative, where it's also critical to us that the C-suite is behind that purpose. So to give you an example, Ralph Hamers, our CEO, is one of our personal sponsors for the Think Forward initiative, as well as his peers within the other partner organizations. So what we do is we organize biannual a meeting with the senior executives of the partner organizations, where they can look to the strategic progress of the Think Forward initiative and also jointly decide on where we will go with Think Forward initiative and if it still matches the purpose that we want to achieve. To me, it's critical that you have in every layer of the organization. So we do have commitment of our C-suite. There's also commitment on the business unit level. To give you an example, we have a very extensive research insights database. So we collect all the insights we commission with the TFI Research Hub, and that's accessible to whoever wants to use it. So also ING business units are tapping in on that insights and using it in their purpose-driven communications towards their customers in the countries. It's very very likable to a lot of customers, and also it's very well engagement-wise. To give you an example, one of the solutions we have is a personality test where you can follow up by subscribing for a newsletter. It will give you tips and tricks, but also challenges based on your personal character. And it's got an opening rate of approximately 64%, which is, I mean, amazing if you compare that to commercial newsletters. So this is, it's a lot of questions, and I hope to have answered it shortly to you.
Yes, you have, and that is great engagement. I've got a history in marketing, and to have that kind of engagement is, well, hats off to you and your team for that. It shows that it's definitely engaging and definitely of value. Andrew, I'd like to come over to you. We've had a few questions around, I suppose, the development of the platform you've created, the platform you've deployed within AstraZeneca, and I suppose maybe a minute or two. I know it's brief, but I'm just conscious of time. But maybe just give an overview of like who was involved in the process. Some of the, I suppose, outlining goals when you started, have they shifted? And then finally, a few people have asked, how many people are actually managing this platform now internally? Just, I suppose, helps get some context on staffing levels.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of the starting point for all, the goals and objectives were really the same as we had for our other social media platforms, which we'd tried to implement. This one actually came about in a very interesting way and probably unorthodox way, in that there was actually a small group of folk in the IT department testing it out. not really known by many people that this was happening. And our CEO happened to be in one of the sites and looked over the shoulder of someone who was using it and said, "What's this?" Had a short demo, and the rest is history. So obviously there was then a substantial amount of work to actually then obviously bring that on board and roll out the launch and the plans for how it would be sort of used within the organisation. But effectively, that it really did come from the top, and I think that's been another critical success factor. Really, Pascal actually was the person who said let's do this, and it all happened very quickly. And he's engaged on the channel, and when he kind of comments on someone's post or likes someone's post, it really makes their day, probably. So yes, I mean, in terms of how it then came about from the rest of the organisation's role and the ongoing role in managing it, obviously the communications teams across the organisation have now sort of taken up the mantle. So although it was initially a sort of dedicated project team who were bringing about the launch of the platform, now that it's sort of embedded pretty well, we're able to run it as part of our normal communications process. It's just another channel. So it's not got a dedicated team of people looking after it anymore. It's been kind of embedded into all of the communications plans, and it's used in exactly the same way as any other channel.
That's brilliant. Thank you, and very interesting to hear. And I'd imagine having the CEO like initiative, like a comment can be rewarding. So maybe a tip there is to have an initiative on the screen as the top is walking past, and hopefully they will see it and inquire. That's one way to, I suppose, get the inquiry and buy-in. Rasmus, you mentioned as part of your presentation, you mentioned that as you are maturing how you work with your stakeholders. What lessons, this would be, I suppose, useful for those listening. What lessons have you learned that others can take guidance from? Some of the, I suppose, the tips or some of the challenges you've experienced, and kind of learnings that could be, I suppose, shared with those that are listening.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that question. I think we've learned that it's important to engage in the conversation. We don't create value in a vacuum. We create value by helping society fill a need, and that requires a continuous conversation with the stakeholders that constitute that society. So I think that's a key learning, and something that we're increasingly courageous about doing, because we come from like many energy companies from a background where we want 3 decimals on a figure before we can talk about it externally, but sometimes driving that conversation about what do we do to improve the world. I think that's you need to engage in that. I also think that we're broadening the scope of the stakeholders that we engage deeply with. We've always had as a key value for the company that we are open and transparent, and we operate with integrity. But I think we're looking at now to deepen the conversations with the stakeholders that are naturally very interested in how we operate. So we don't just want to build green energy; we want to do it in a sustainable manner. So one of the things we're working on, which is, I wouldn't call it an experimentation, but it is the first time we're doing something like this, is that we've set up a partnership with the Danish branch of the WWF, and we've shaken hands that we want to collaborate on limiting impact of climate change for wildlife, as well as increasing awareness among younger generations about climate change. And I think that's a new way for us to engage in the global or local conversation about what do we need to do to limit climate change or to limit global warming, and what do we also need to do to manage the effects of that. So I think in some engage in a conversation with those stakeholders that are interested, and a lot will be, and have those conversations about what do they think they need you to do differently. How do you make yourself vulnerable in a way that you can actually learn from these people that in some areas know a lot more than yourself.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. And that's, I suppose, a bit of a theme that goes across the three of your presentations is, you know, be vulnerable, be prepared for that two-way dialogue, and obviously be prepared to incorporate that into, you know, the change of strategy. That's communications is a two-way street, and I think that's been apparent through all three of yours presentations. I just want to, well, firstly, apologise because we are actually out of time. We've just gone past the allotted hour for the webinar, and I know, you know, we're all busy people, and yes, I don't want to hold in people any longer. So, sorry, we're going to have to cut it short there. There's a lot of questions coming in. We'll compile them, and we'll look to try and provide answers to the questions over the analysis that we produce. We might hope, well, we're trying to send some of them to the speakers to see if we can get some of their insights as part of the knowledge exchanges of this webinar and lead up to the Responsible Business Summit in June. So yes, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in today. For those that have asked their questions, thank you for submitting those questions, and I'd also send a warm thank you to Rasmus, to Dagmar, to Andrea, and unfortunately Ruben couldn't join us, but to all four of you for being part of this webinar prep and sharing your insights, and thank you so much for your time. As I said, this is part of the build up to Responsible Business Summit Europe that's taking place in June, where we've got 600 business leaders meeting to address how business can take action, how they can engage key stakeholders to help them be part of the solution and accelerate impact. So if you want more information about that, do visit our website, ethicalcorp.com/RBS. But that's it. Until next time, all the very best. Take care and keep up the great work. Bye-bye.